Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Open Line. We have with us as our guest the CEO of the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee, Eric Stillman, talking about anti-Semitism. Is it on the rise? And really the differing opinions of the general public and the Jewish community. We have several calls, so I'm just going to take them in the order they were received. Let's start with Wilma. Hello, Wilma?
Yes?
Go right ahead.
Well, I just commented to the lady I talked with earlier. I think the reason it's on the rise is because of the influx of so many aliens coming in here from other countries, especially the Arab population. Naturally, they are going to be against the Jews, and I happen to have worked with some Jews in my youth who were the most generous, kind people I have ever known. And I don't think the people who are true Americans, who have, my family has been here since the 1600s, as has my husband's, and we were never prejudiced against the Jews, and I don't know of any people who have been here for years and years who are against the Jews. I think it's the influx of people coming in here from other countries.
All right, Wilma. All right, thank you. Okay, you heard Wilma. What do you think? What do you think, Eric?
Well, I appreciate Wilma's question very much. And in fact, I know that because anti-Semitism is such a very old hatred, we've had literally centuries of hatred toward Jews, which predates even the existence of the United States as a country and far back in history. So we are grappling with a long-standing issue. And there's no question that there can be groups who are just uncomfortable with other people. And I'm grateful to hear that Wilma and the people that Wilma knows and her family, that they have high regard for the Jewish people. And I can only hope that there will be more folks who have an appreciation for their Jewish neighbors the way Wilma does. Not everyone, of course, does have a positive opinion of Jewish people. Some folks have never met a Jewish person, and so they just simply are unfamiliar with Jewish people, and they may have understood or thought that they understood stereotypes about Jewish people, which can lead to anti-Semitic opinions. And then people may not even realize when they're repeating these anti-Semitic stereotypes that they are in fact being anti-Semitic by doing so. And that's where I think education comes in. And I'll tell you as a great example, coming up on January 27th, the Jewish Federation here in Nashville is organizing an event which is going to be for education about anti-Semitism. We're opening up to the whole community. It's going to be held in downtown Nashville at 5 o'clock that day, and we've invited elected officials, business leaders, academic and civic leaders, faith leaders. We are encouraging a wide cross-section of folks to come out, learn about anti-Semitism, make a commitment not to participate in any way themselves in anti-Semitism, and to speak up when they hear others speaking or taking actions that are anti-Semitic. That is one of the best ways that we can address this issue.
Okay, let's go to Stacy. Hello, Stacy.
Hi, Ben. Mr. Stillman. I'm Stacey Harris. I'm the author of an article called Kosher Country, Success and Survival on Nashville's Music Row that anybody can Google. It's actually based on an article that was in the Jewish Forward about anti-Semitism in the music industry generally, and I just kind of updated it. But when I wrote that article, it was in 1999, and I could have a host of things to add since then, but I would really encourage anybody that's interested in the history of anti-Semitism in Nashville to look at that article, Kosher Country, again, Success and Survival Nashville's Music Row. And let's see, I'm just listening to Mr. Stillman, and a couple things that may have predate his tenure here. There was a shooting at the West End Synagogue. I can't remember when it was. It was several years ago, and they had a kind of a march in support of it. That case, as I understand it, remains unsolved. And then prior to that, there was a murder of a lawyer named Sam Schlanger. And that murder, the case, the West End shooting remains unsolved, and so does Sam Schlanger's murder. And when they talk about the different murders, the unsolved murders in the city, and they update them, you never hear that one mentioned. So I'm just running that by you. And a couple things. When I first came to Nashville, one of my first stops was at a gas station, and I had mentioned something to the attendant. I don't know about price of gas or whatever, and he said, "Don't." This is when they still wiped your windows and all of that, and he says, "Don't worry, I'm not going to Jew you down." And I have never heard that expression before, but I knew instantly what it meant, and I think a lot of well, let me kind of fast forward. More recently, I was invited to an event.
All right. Can I ask? You don't have a ton of time, but ask if you have a question or wrap that up. But go ahead. It's all good.
I would like to tie this into. I've actually talked to the CRC, Mr. Stillman, about the Southern Women's Show, and they've had a booth where they've had Messianic Jews, and I think that part of the ignorance is behind some of the anti-Semitism, because I was going to talk about an event with Kathy Gifford and the man that she identified as her rabbi, who is a Messianic Jew, and I think it was just very confusing to everybody gathered there, and I think we could start with the Southern Women's Show, because that's when that gets going again. If these people continue to have their booth, they just need to be honest about who they are. Nobody would call a group Protestants for the Pope. They wouldn't say that represents Catholics. So
okay. All right, Stacy, thank you. Thank you for mentioning your article that you wrote. She also mentioned 2 murders that remain unsolved. Are you aware of those murders?
So Ben, I was glad Stacy called in, and I was aware of the shooting that had occurred at West End Synagogue. It happened before my arrival in Nashville. And from what I understand, that a shot was fired at the congregation. There was a bullet hole in a window. I don't know that any person was struck. And the other case that she referenced, a murder, again, I think may have occurred before my time here. And I do know historically there have been other incidents. There was, during the Civil Rights era, there was a bombing at the Jewish Community Center in its former location, which had been pretty much right now where West End Avenue and the 440 intersect. So yes, there is that history. And I think what Stacy brings up in a variety of ways is how important it is for there to be a close working relationship between the Jewish communities, such as the Jewish Federation and our congregation, and law enforcement. And we do have a wonderful working relationship, and I'm very grateful for that opportunity. And what I think she also touched on, which is really important, it goes back to education. And she made reference to a group where there was a table or a booth of Messianic Jews, and really the education of understanding that the organized Jewish community, represented by the Federation and by our congregations, are very different from, let's say, Messianic Jews. And I think if we really understand what was at the heart of Stacy's comments and her question, is that over the course of time, education has to be an ongoing process, that we are going to need to make sure that folks in the general population are educated about what is anti-Semitism, what is the issue, and how do you address it. And so I believe there's some really good points about what Stacy said, and I'd be very interested in looking up her article.
Yeah, look up her article. There were some other points. I want to go to Reverend Fuzz. Always happy to hear from Reverend Fuzz.
Hey, Dan.
Hi, go right ahead.
This will be quite interesting. Last Friday, and I'm not being racist or anything, but I have a guy who I call him my redneck friend. Okay, and he and I go back and forth on that, and sometimes we'll go to lunch. So last Friday, I thought I found it, and this time I'm going to invite one of my Jewish friends to show up at the lunch and see how they get along. Man, they were best of friends. They knew about one another. This coming Friday, I'm going to dinner. Me and a friend, we're going to dinner with a Jewish couple. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to learn about each other. So you say anti-Semitism. I think there's anti-ethnicity in our country right now. So I'm not going to let the Jews get into a corner and think it's just their group. It's all of America. And Gandhi, one of my favorite quotes, Gandhi said, I like the Christians in America. And I took that and turned it around and I said, I like the Christians, the Jews, the Buddhists, the Hindu, the gays. I like everybody. And so I think there's some anti-ethnicity in our country, anti-gender, and it's unfortunate that America is like that, and I don't know if education is going to be the answer or if it's just going to be the good people deciding to speak up and be good people and not be afraid and not think it's just you. The Chinese have problems, the Asians, it's all over America. I'm sorry it's like that. But that's what it comes to right now. We are divided, not just Republican and Democrat, black and white, but there's a lot of division, not just the Jews. And I think the Jews ought to take some responsibility, and blacks ought to take responsibility, and rednecks and everybody ought to take some responsibility and try to get the good people together, and let's just have a good time.
Reverend Fuzz, thank you. I always love hearing from you. Reverend Fuzz, thank you so much for calling in. What do you think? He's saying it's not unique to the Jews. There's an anti-ethnicity problem in the United States. And I think he's hitting on what we talked about a little bit up at the top of the show, but it's all of America, anti-ethnicity problem. What do you think?
So I think the Reverend's made an excellent point, which I would even build upon, because the anti-other, the feeling that there's people who are different from you or me. And so when folks are feeling agitated toward people who are different from they are, well, that's unfortunately a really important aspect of the situation. And I think what the Reverend talked about was he would go and he'd break bread with people. He'd have lunches with people. He'd have dinners with people. He'd get to know them. And I think that is a wonderful idea, because it's very hard to dislike someone when you actually get to know the person, when you share a meal together. You're talking about a real person. You're having a communication between two individuals or two couples, what have you. And that's very, very different from talking about other people, whether it's another ethnicity, other religion, other skin tone, other gender preferences. You know, when you actually are talking to somebody face to face and having hopefully a decent conversation over some kind of a meal, if that's possible, or a cup of coffee, it helps so much for people to get beyond their biases and their hatreds of other people when they actually get to know somebody who they don't otherwise identify as being someone like themselves.
And we talked about how people are in their silos now, and maybe they don't mix with other people. That's always been the case. I mean, we say that about social media, but also social media gives us access to people that we never maybe had access to before. We choose to sometimes get in these silos, but there is an opportunity for us to meet and go to dinner with all kinds of different people, and we can so grow and benefit from that.
Well, there's no question about it, and it just requires a little bit of openness. If you're willing to go beyond your silo, if you're willing to sort of extend your hand and say, I'd like to learn, I'd like to meet, I'd like to get to know somebody who's not like me, somebody who's different from me, from a different, again, ethnicity, race, religion, gender, preferences. It's so important that we as a society do that cross political lines and even beyond politics is just understanding and accepting the fact that we have this very big country with a lot of different types of folks in it. And if we can learn to get along a little better, all of our lives will be a whole lot better.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a break. Come back, continue our discussion. I believe Michael was on the line and others. Hold on. We will take a break. Be back right after this.